hobby action in today's video. I'm going to show you how to use blue stuff from greenstuffworld and what I do to cast up parts of my 40k armies to use in scenery or on bases, that kind of thing. So like, comment, subscribe if you do enjoy the video, chuck some comments down what you'd like to see next, that kind of thing. So if you've watched my previous videos, you will see that my bases and some scenery that I've put on frequently has parts from other kits cast up and put onto the base just to add a bit of visual interest, and this is primarily how I do it, using blue stuff. So you've seen the pack that I got there is about a 12 quid pack. Obviously you can get it at a discount from your friendly local gaming store, and it's suitable for making several moulds depending on the size of the pieces you do. So today I'm going to show you a 2-part mould and a single part mould. First thing you do before using it, bang it all into boiling water like you've just seen, leave it for 3-4 minutes and then take it out and it'll be pliable and you can start making a mould out of it. So the bit I'm not using here I've put back in the boiling water just to keep it soft. So first thing I'm going to cast up is the chimney piece from the miasmic malignifier, you can see there, and that's typical of what I do. Whatever army I'm working on at the moment, I will cast up pieces from that army to either use on that army's bases or to use on future armies' bases to tie the collection together or conversions or whatever, and it's just a rolling process that I've done for a few years now. So what I've done there is taken a piece of the blue stuff to a big enough size to cover the piece I want to cast, and I've pressed it down onto the table to make a flat bottom there and to physically cover the space of the piece. When you put the piece in, it's important, press it in and then use your fingers to press that blue stuff around the model. You know, make sure it's contacting around all the sides, full contact kind of at the base, and just keep pressing and squishing it until it looks like it's contacted properly. And you want to go roughly halfway up the piece for a 2-part mould that we're making here. Then once you're happy with that it's all the contact points covered that you want to be getting, take a paintbrush, something like that, and just spike it into the blue stuff like you can see there, and that will then later in a few minutes make some pins to seal the 2-part mould together. Now on the piece I'm doing now, you'll see I've not covered the entire piece because I don't want the kind of vents at the top to cast. I literally more want the tubing. But you can cast up as much of the piece as you want, cover as much as you like, and try and go halfway up the model. You'll see from when you make models there's always mould lines on models, and this is where mould lines come from traditionally in the casting process. So second part to make, after 5-6 minutes of letting the first piece cool down, take your second piece back out of the boiling water and mould it onto the top of the first piece you've made. It's important to start with to press down from the top middle around the piece to force any air out, and then when you've done that, move the blue stuff down the sides of this piece, because then it kind of wraps around the base of the model and it helps it hold it in place later on when you're actually casting up using it. Flatten the top down. You don't have to do this, but if you make a nice flat top, flat sides, when we're casting later on, you can put some weight on the top and it will stay stable to sort of hold the mould together. So certainly worth doing there. So again, keep playing until you're happy that the mould's in the right shape, you're happy that you've pressed it down and covered all the model, and it is going to be secure on both. And it takes a bit of practice. You know, you do a couple of moulds, you might mess up the first 1 or 2, not quite happy with how you've done it, but that's fine. You can just heat this up again and reuse it. So now we're using a 1-part mould, and I want to be casting up the kind of grill section on the malignifier here. 1-part molds are a bit easier to do because it literally is either force the blue stuff onto the model you want to mould, or push the bit of model you want to mould into the blue stuff, depending on, you know, size variance. And I'm using quite a lot of blue stuff here for the purpose of this video, because I didn't have a whole lot of other stuff to cast up, and I just thought, you know, big moulds is not a problem, but you can actually use fairly small pieces of blue stuff to cast up fairly small pieces of model. So it's, you know, as long as it's broad, depending how you want to do it. One thing to watch if you are, though, when you're making single piece models or 2-piece models, is don't force too heavily into it, because what you don't want to do is leave just like a millimetre of blue stuff in between you know, the edge and the model piece, because then when you put in the milliput or your green stuff in later to actually make the model, you can end up ripping the casting. So what I'm doing here, as you can see, onto the magnifier, just forcing it on, making it sort of nice and square and flat so it'll work when I put it down later, and just checking through to make sure there's no kind of air bubbles or anything in there that might cause an issue. And you can see the blue stuff actually does go sort of quite transparent, so you can see if you've missed something or there's a big kind of air bubble in there. So keep playing until you're happy. One important thing to say is this stuff can be reused again and again and again. I've got some, I think the first piece of blue stuff I bought 3-4 years ago, I think, I'd guess. So and I've used that and reheated it and used it on different armies and different models kind of time and time again, and I have mixed up old and new blue stuff when I've mashed it together, and it doesn't seem to have affected the casting process. It's definitely sharper and crisper when you first buy it, but you know, it still lasts and still does a very good job. So I've left these to dry, I think it was overnight, and you can see when you pull the model off, you can see the detail in there on the single piece. When you're pulling apart two-piece models, they will stick together a little bit more occasionally, especially if you've only left sort of 5-6 minutes in between doing the base part and the top part. So if you want to guarantee that they won't catch together a little bit and you don't have to be super careful, you can make the bottom part of the mould, leave it a few hours, then heat up the rest of the blue stuff and do the top part of the mould, and that's just an easier way, but for speed I just made this in the same sort of session. So peel it apart gently, and you can see there the pin and the kind of socket part of the mould we've made when we put it together. So that's the two parts of the mould. Now you will see a lot on YouTube of people doing moulds and models and things, and you can cast up entire models doing this process, cast up each individual piece. Now look, your moral flexibility as to whether you want to do that is entirely up to yourself. I personally disagree with it, and I only use it for pieces to go on bases or scenery, figuring that, well, I'm never going to buy those pieces separately because, well, why would I? It's just something different. So I don't have a particular issue because I don't think it's then taking money off the companies that you might cast up. Casting full figures, however, a little bit different. I have done it once or twice, and to be honest, they look pretty good, and they look probably 90% of what you would buy, and you could get it better, but for me, I'd rather put money in the pocket of the model developers and use my blue stuff and casting things for little bits of scenery or little bits of conversion pieces that they wouldn't use. But look, hey, that's up to you. Knock yourself out. I've seen some very, very good personal self recast models, and look, if that's what you want to do with this stuff, that's great, and you certainly can do it. It just takes a lot of patience. So I'm filling the mould here with milliput. So I've pre-mixed it, left it for a few minutes. I've not left it for a long time to go non-sticky like you would normally do working with milliput, because you want it to stick together in the mould. So push it into both sides, try and keep it fairly clean and not spilling out away from the indentations. You do want to put a little bit more than to the flat level on both sides, because you need it slightly raised to stick together. The more you put in though, the more flash you will get pushing out from outside the mould. If you do put too much in, you'll never be able to get the mould to sit together. So I'm filling the single part here. The two-part mould I've then taken to one side, and because I've made a flat top and a flat bottom, I've then put a weight on top of it to push the milliput together. When I didn't used to put weight on top of it, I've had the occasional time when the two-part mould, I didn't press it together strong enough, and literally the two pieces end up casting totally separately, which, you know, is not what the intention is. The beauty of two-part moulds is you can actually use them as single-part moulds as well later on to make a flat piece of piping or whatever, if that's what you want. So removing from the mould is dead easy. Try and remove it so that the mould is not going to catch on a piece. So you need to kind of know the flow or the grain of the model you're using and try and take it out really carefully. But if you've left it overnight, milliput's set solid. And if you do this with green stuff is even more solid. So there's no real danger of breaking it as you take it out, but it can happen. So just, you know, don't rush to take the piece out. And you see the two-part there, you can see the sort of flash that I spoke about sticking out of the side of the mould. Now, the more milliput you put in the mould, the more flash you'll get, but it is easy to clean off, and it breaks off, or just scrape it off with a knife and you won't notice it at the end. But doing a two-part mould yourself, you do have a little bit of sympathy for how flash arises on official models, but then you're doing this for free, so there's no excuse for the ones that pay for us to get flash on it. You'll see there the single-part mould. Again, you don't have to fill it every single time, so whenever I'm doing anything with milliput, I will use any leftovers. I'll just grab one of these moulds out of the box and I'll just put the milliput in there to one that I fancy. So you can see there are 3 different sizes of pillar that I cast up from the Sisters of Battle set. This is something I've cast up from the Necrons. So this is some Necron pieces from the Necron monolith kit that they do. Convergence of Dominion. So I've cast up a few pieces from that, which you'll see in my first video that I did for YouTube. So it really is quite a good thing to do, and it stops a lot of waste, because every time you use milliput for any other projects, you can use what's left to cast up either a big piece or just a small piece if you haven't got a whole lot of milliput left. So very, very versatile, very, very useful. My typical habit is to just cast pieces up as and when I've got spare milliput. And some of these pieces have sat in a box for ages, so this is a Sisters piece. I've melted down this mould since then, and this I've used on my Death Guard, which I'll show you a picture of at the end, onto my Demon Prince, a sort of ruined world kind of thing. So I think it's a great thing to do. Adds a bit of character to your army. Certainly lifts them from just standard basing. And to be fair, it's fairly cheap, fairly inexpensive. So have fun with it. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, fab. Check out the next video, and I'll hopefully see you all next time.